People across D.C. already feeling the impact of National Guard troops and federal officers on city streets, and police policies are shifting in real time. Joining us now is former D.C. Police Chief Charles Ramsey to break down what this means for the department and the community. Good to have you with us today, Chief.
Thank you.
Given your experience with D.C. Police, what was your immediate reaction to the federal takeover of the department by the Trump administration?
Well, it was the way it was being done. Certainly, crime is down in the district, but the reality is you can never get crime down far enough. And it's not just about statistics, it's about people's fear of crime, which obviously is pretty high and is high in cities across America. So if the real goal is to try to get a handle on crime, then it's hard to argue against that. My problem with it is the how it's being done. It's just this sudden surge of individuals, law enforcement agencies inside the district, but more importantly, the use of the National Guard like this. I think that is something that you have to really carefully think about before you put National Guard out there. There's training issues, there's use of force issues. Everything has to be carefully coordinated with the Metropolitan Police Department and the mayor's office if this is going to work.
I wanted to ask, you were the longest serving police chief in D.C. since home rule, and you really developed a strong rapport with the D.C. community. During your tenure, we saw crime drop roughly 40% within the district. What specific strategies or community partnerships were really critical to that success, and how does that compare to what you're seeing now?
Well, I mean, I'm a huge proponent of community policing, and you have to get out in the communities. You have to build relationships and partnerships. Now, in the National Capital Region, as you know, the Metropolitan Police Department works with federal agencies on a daily basis. And so you have relationships that are already established there, and you can really build off of that. It's not as if you don't need additional resources. No one's arguing that, but it's not just about having a real quick impact where you suppress crime, which is what's happening right now because of the sheer numbers of law enforcement that's been put into the district. Can you sustain it long term? And what's the strategy from the federal government around sustaining long term to maintain the safety and security of the District of Columbia? I haven't heard anybody talking about that.
Now, I've been talking specifically with some D.C. residents who are particularly living in some of the more high crime areas. They say they are completely in support of this federal intervention. And I'm curious, from your perspective, does that, indicate a kind of failure of maybe local government or police, or does that just indicate a need for something different?
Well, it doesn't indicate a failure. What it indicates is what I said earlier. People are afraid. It's the fear of crime, and it's the reality of crime. You have pockets of crime in the district. We have them here in Philadelphia and every city that I've worked in. We can talk about crime stats and being lower, but for people in some neighborhoods, they don't see the difference because that's where the crime is occurring. And so they're desperate for any kind of strategy, any kind of intervention at all. But it has to be something that's sustainable. It has to be something that you strategically plan on how you're going to use the resources over time to really have an impact on crime, again, long term. You can't surge this number of people and leave them there for any real significant period of time.
I want just as we wrap up, I wanted to get one more question in. Community trust, you've talked about how important it is. How much is that in jeopardy with a move like this from the president in terms of that delicate relationship between law enforcement and the communities they live and work in?
Well, if it's not handled properly with the right training, and if the federal agencies that are involved, the National Guard that's involved, treating people respectfully and not just thinking that everyone who lives in a particular part of D.C., whether it's east of the river or wherever it might be, that everyone's a criminal. Everyone isn't a criminal. What information do they have to really target the individuals that are causing the harm in our communities? Those are the kinds of things that you need to be able to work through the city, through the police department to know who they are. Nobody has a problem getting bad guys off the street. But you can't just think you can just sweep up everybody and get the job done. It has to be done properly.
All right. Former D.C. Police Chief Charles Ramsey, we certainly appreciate your time and your expertise on this. Thank you.